The State Department says that building this pipeline creates 42,000 direct and indirect jobs, has a negligible impact upon the environment, and saves lives as there are fewer accidents shipping oil by pipeline instead of rail or truck. Unfortunately, President Obama continues to oppose job-creating projects such as the Keystone. Sadly, Democrats in Washington stand with President Obama rather than standing with hard-working families in Louisiana and elsewhere.
Those in the energy industry are laying down the law to the president and those around him. The dithering about the Keystone Pipeline project has to stop, and stop now. And the press is coming not just from Republicans, but those in the president's own party who govern those who are in desperate need of the economic kick that it may provide. Let's welcome back to MidPoint. Founder and CEO of TrackBill.com, Steve Marciniak, joins us today. Steve, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Steve, here we go. Let's look at a timeline here. You won't be able to see this, but I'm going to show this graphic to our audience here so we can get a little idea here as far as the time that's involved here, which can take up generations. We have the Trans-Canada permit application actually being started September 19th of 2008. First report comes out in 2011. Emissions are okay. Then 2012, President Obama rejects the permit, saying it's just you crazy Republicans. 2014, second report, emissions not significant. Here we go again. April 18th of this year, indefinite review extension. All right, Steve, let's get down to the simple question here. What are we looking at here? Another 6 years, 10 years, 12 years? How long is this going to take?
Well, from the looks of it, and if history continues the way that it's been going, it could obviously take quite some time. I certainly think that there are ways that we can go ahead and speed this process up one way or the other. It just is going to come down to a little bit of compromise. I think both sides feel that, in order for one side to win, the other side has to lose. And I don't necessarily think that's the case here. And I think if we can find some middle ground, everyone can get what they want.
Let's go ahead and talk about the middle ground then, because there's always that wonderful need for compromise in all this. What you have here is the oil and gas groups have lobbied significantly harder for the project than the environmentalists fighting against it. So there you have it. You have the oil sitting over here, the environmentalists sitting over here. I'll be honest with you, there's a lot of people who say that you're never going to get those two sides together. So where does that compromise start, and where do we have to grow that from?
Sure. Well, I think you have to look at the two sides of the table. I don't think it's big oil against environmentalists. What I see the problem is we have those that want to see this pipeline succeed in order to increase employment with those 42,000 jobs that you were talking about earlier. And on the other side, you have those that feel that this is a hazard to the environment, and in order to protect it, they simply cannot allow this pipeline to go forward. So, as I mentioned, I think both sides feel that, there's no way that you can really reach a compromise, exactly as you were saying, but I certainly think you can. And now I think it starts with the 42,000 jobs. Who are those jobs going to go to, and for what period of time are they going to be there? And the reason why I asked those two questions is because I think depending on who the jobs go to can make a dramatic impact in how this thing plays out, and as well as how long these jobs are actually carried out for. Granted, there's going to be some, if the pipeline were to go through, there would certainly be some maintenance to it and so forth. But outside of that, what happens then once this pipeline's complete? And then from there, those are the two kind of questions. Who are these jobs going to, and for how long? And then on the environmental side, it's how can we do something that is actually going to work? How can we do something that can certainly protect the environment? And my answer to that is small business.
Okay, let me go back to environmentalists here for just a moment, because we just saw some video. We saw a lot of environmentalists, and they're actually getting their message out here. So how much juice do they really have here? Because it would seem to be that is the point, other than the president, of course, and it being nothing more than a partisan fight, as most everything's are these days. But should we discount the environmentalists' impact on this, or still point to them and say that this is a big reason why this isn't happening?
Sure. So I did some research on the Keystone Pipeline to find some facts and figures that certainly do tend to skew towards, the environmental hazards, and I'll speak to those. So what we have right now is, the oil that we transport through pipelines here now in the U.S., those pipelines are heated to about 100 degrees Fahrenheit. But the tar sands, a much cruder, denser, more, tarry substance, that needs to be heated at 160 degrees Fahrenheit in order for that flow, the viscosity, to equal that of the oil we have now. So you're increasing the temperature from 100 to 160 degrees Fahrenheit, which when you do that, every 20 degrees that you need to increase to transport this oil, the chance of any kind of breakage or spillage doubles. So when you're talking about 160 degrees, you're looking at an 8 times chance that something could potentially happen.
Now, the State Department and John Kerry, they're in the process of reviewing whether or not the pipeline is actually in America's interest. Okay, you've done the numbers. You've run a lot of this research here. Honestly, when you get right down to the end, is this pipeline seriously in the interest of America, economically, strategically, however you want to place it?
Sure. Yes, I do think it is in the best interest. But I think it depends on how you carry things out. So I'd mentioned that, I think small business is the answer. And so you're probably thinking, well, what do you mean? Well, this is something I think that a number of small businesses can undertake. And while that may seem risky, they're small, maybe they're newer, maybe they don't have the experience of some of these larger companies and so forth. I say that's not true, being a business owner myself and understanding what the needs of our customers are. And so what I'm getting at is that, there's a number of companies out there that can make this project a lot safer. There's companies such as one I worked with a couple years ago, which is how I was introduced to the Keystone Pipeline. And that company is called Autonomic Materials. What Autonomic Materials does is if, say, you were to coat a pipeline to make sure that there's no breakage, but obviously that can still happen. So how do you prevent that? Well, they've created a capsule that you add into this layer that you coat the piping with, and then anytime that there's a crack, kind of in the same regard that if you scratch your skin, it heals up. When that crack happens in the pipeline, these capsules burst open and fill it, therefore preventing any kind of spillage. And with technologies like that, where you have something new to the game, and you also have a really fast to respond team, being a part of a small business and not having to deal with all those different decision makers, means things get done a lot quicker, and you have just a very passionate team behind you to get that done. I think that's a recipe for creating even better technology, and these startups are investing a lot in research and development. If you can create things like that to make the pipeline safer, I think you get the jobs that you're looking for, but you also get the peace of mind that, this isn't just a piece of legislation that claims that the pipeline is safe for whatever reason or another. It's actual technology being implemented that hasn't been used before in this capacity to really make a difference.
All right, we're going back and forth a little bit on jobs, because this is still what this is about. America needs jobs. People want jobs. We've got to find a way to do it. And the Republicans are always firing back, saying what the president and the Democrats are doing is stopping jobs from coming to the American people. Now, U.S. Rep. Cory Gardner out of Colorado said not long ago that we would create thousands of jobs in Colorado if the Keystone Pipeline were to be built. Now, PolitiFact went in, looked at it, and they rated that mostly false. They said that there's not a lot of jobs there.
Sure.
However, there are those people who say these are solid jobs that will be around for a long time to come. We've got about a minute 15 to go here. Where's the truth in all this?
Sure. I really can't speak to necessarily all the research that's been done on it.
Sure.
Obviously, my primary function is to develop software. But I think that the jobs will be there initially. I have a hard time believing that once that Keystone Pipeline is complete, that they're going to remain there. As I mentioned, you're going to have maintenance and so forth. But I think for the most part, until the next project comes along, that you're going to be in a very similar situation. Whereas when you're investing in small businesses and you're able to fuel research and development behind it, then you're able to retain those permanent employees for a much longer period of time.
It's all in the numbers and all part of the questions that people are asking as this pipeline drags on and on and on and on, and who knows how much longer. Steve Marciniak, it's always a pleasure, my friend. Thanks for giving us a little clarity here.
Thank you. All right. Take
Also
care.
willing to note as well, to follow this out, Bloomberg recently had a note out that said that the Keystone Pipeline, according to them and others, would actually raise prices at the pump in the Midwest and the Rocky Mountains 10 to 20 cents a gallon. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that there are large stockpiles of crude oil in the U.S. and supplies of crude in areas like Cushing, Oklahoma, are up 150% from 04 to 11. So still there's a tremendous amount of discussion as to whether or not this is going to A, create jobs, B, bring down the price of gas, but still, how about letting this thing move ahead instead of constantly stopping it, right? Next up, from the video pages of America's Forum and the Steve Malzberg Show. And you also tell us what you think as well, as we tell you that still on the docket is going to be the sale that may not actually be a sale in sports. A lot more coming up on MidPoint.